Right, good morning, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. Yes, good. Right, hopefully we are going to be looking at how to write a news article this morning. Somebody asked me to go over this with them because there are several news articles that come up either in your assignments or in progression tests, or maybe you even get one in the exam. So you really need to know what you're doing. Okay. And hopefully you'll learn something from here. Okay. If you have any questions, you can put them onto the web chat. Okay, that's good. Some people are managing to hear me loud and clear. Good news. Right, let's look briefly at the first thing you do if you have to write a news article. First thing you have to do, of course, is research. Okay, very important. First of all, you must decide what you're actually going to write about. Okay, if you've been given a task or an assignment, you make sure you understand it properly before you even start. If you're unsure, just check with your teacher. Send a little note saying, is this the essay I have to write? Because the one I'm specifically going to look at today is about the Badlands. It was about Badlands, which is a travel account, isn't it? So some people wrote me some absolutely beautiful travel accounts of going to London, going to Croatia, going to Italy, but they hadn't really read and understood the task, what it was about. It shouldn't have been about those places that they decided to write about. It had to be about Badlands National Park. Okay, right. Secondly, if you have any sort of previous experience in the topic you have to write about, be careful to avoid bias. Maybe you have some strong opinions, which may be positive or negative, of what happened to you previously, and this could affect your neutral writing, because news articles should be neutral, no bias, okay? Right. Begin your notes with a detailed and systematic research, because you must never ever get your facts wrong. Why? Because if you really were a journalist, this could lead to the newspaper being sued, and of course you would be fired. Maybe you would even get sued in your personal capacity, because who knows what happens these days, and then you would be broke for life or put in jail if you couldn't pay some big fine or other that you got. Anyway, so going back to research notes, research where, use other articles, books, and on the internet that will give you a full understanding of what you've to write about. Once you fully understand something, it's much easier to write about it rather than just create or make up rubbish, okay? Then maybe you've to write about people or organizations. Then you have to find some background information on them. Again, resorting to the internet, articles, books, whatever you can find. But of course, make sure you're not using any false news. Thirdly, what you would have to do, were you doing it properly, you would interview any people whom you think might be able to give you further information, and particularly quotes about the event or whatever you've to write about. Assertions or quotations need to be attributed to someone. So you have to say, according to Jane Smith, she saw such and such and such and such. So that information must be reliable and it must be an appropriate source. Otherwise, it wouldn't be suitable for publication. So you took your article to the editor and he said, no, that's not correct. This person doesn't exist, or they didn't say that. So you have to make sure in your notes you include a name, a date, and contact information or address of your sources, so that you personally have them. If something comes up, you've got everything at your fingertips in your notes. And then, oh gosh, there's no one to give you any quotations. What you can do is dig up some experts in the field. You'll probably have seen, particularly on TV, there's always some political expert who wants to discuss the latest thing that the government has done or somebody has said. And that's who you can call on as well. But again, you need the source, name, date, contact info. Okay, everything that you might have to come back and look at if there's a problem. Okay, so this is your research notes, the very first thing that you will do before you write any type of news article or news report, online report. Right, because of course you're going to get either people reading on their actual newspapers or online. So it's got to be suitable for both. Right, how do you go about starting to write the article? You've got to structure it, first of all, by writing an outline. So you review all your research and notes, everything that you've made yourself understand about the topic. Then you jot down your ideas into sections. So this is going to be your draft outline. What sections do you have? First of all, you have a headline, and keep it short and simple. It's got to be eye-catching. Try and grab your reader. You might want to change it later, so it's still a draft, so it'll be your draft headline. For example, lion eats keeper. Okay, that sounds interesting. Then after that, you have something called a byline. Okay, it comes straight under the headline, the byline. And this is just the writer or author of the article, which is going to be you. Okay. Now, the very important first thing you have to write is called the stand first, or the lead sentence. This is where you try to reel your reader in, just like you're catching a fish. Okay? The stand first generally summarizes the story in one sentence if possible. And this helps the reader decide if they want to read the rest of the story or not. So if you've written an interesting or eccentric, weird, something that interests your reader, he'll go on to read your article, which will be a good thing because the newspaper or magazine you're writing for will be more popular and the boss or the editor will be very happy with you. Okay? So that's your stand first. Then after that, you've got a little introduction, which sets the scene and summarizes who, what, where, and when all happened. You must assume no prior knowledge for any of your readers. They don't know anything. That's why you've got to set the scene for them and tell them what happened, where it happened, when it happened. Okay? You might even have an opening quotation that you could discuss, which lets the reader know who's involved and what they were thinking. Okay, so you've got some choices to think about depending on the title of your news article. Then you look at your main paragraphs that you're going to write. Now you've introduced the story, you put events into the correct order, and you use the facts from your research and quotes from your interviewees to write your paragraphs. Someone asked how long should the paragraphs be? They only need to be 2 or 3 lines. Okay, they don't need to be long at all. The article must not contain personal opinions because, as we said before, you must be unbiased. You must use the active voice wherever possible, not the passive. That's obviously to do with your verbs. And if something is active, it's much more interesting. It's happening like now. Okay? If you use the passive voice, it becomes more like a narrative you are telling a story about instead of something that's actually happening right now and can change at any minute. You've got to get the excitement in there. And that's when you use the active voice. And also, you should write in short, clear sentences without using any big, long words. because you have to accommodate readers of all backgrounds and abilities. Some people might not be very good at language, or they might only be 10 or 11, 12 years old. They won't be able to understand big, long words. So you keep that for different type of articles. A news article is all about what's happening now, and you're keeping it short, clear, and sharp. Okay? I mean, some people wrote me a news article the other day, and their paragraph was the whole essay. It began at the top of the page, it ended at the bottom of the page. Never heard of paragraphing, it's like crazy. You're not going to get lots of marks doing that. Okay, so just look at our sections again. Headline, byline, your stand first or lead sentence, little bit of then your main paragraphs, a little bit of introduction, put the events in order, and be careful not to put any personal opinion. Use the active voice you write in short, clear sentences. Okay. Further, you might need to have some subheadings on these paragraphs, depending who you are writing for. If you had to write for, say, junior school children or teenagers, it's better to have subheadings, because again, you can look at that subheading. Do I need to read it? No, because some people don't like reading a lot, so they're going to read the bare minimum. But you should still be able to let them know what happens nevertheless. Okay. Let's read this little part. In a news article, you typically put the most critical information at the beginning. Okay, so that could be your first paragraph in your main events, main paragraphs, and this ensures your reader sees the most important details first. The reader might be interested enough to read the whole article or not. If he's not, maybe you haven't done a good job. But thereafter, when you've done that, this is when you can bring in your supporting information, your facts and or quotations. And yet again, just to remind you, if you do quote somebody, you must put their name and any other descriptive or pertinent information with the quote. Okay, according to a bystander, according to an old lady who was going past, you really have all their names and details in your research file. But you don't need to put that on there, but you should say something about who the quote has to be attributed to. You might also have a few photos for your article. You must always have a caption on each photo that you have. You can't just stick a photo in willy-nilly, okay? So the source of the photo should be acknowledged as well. So the photo might be old lady with trolley, James Brown, let's say, and that's the source of the photo acknowledged as well. Because anyone who's had a part to play in this article must be acknowledged. Otherwise, you're plagiarizing and stealing their work. We discussed plagiarism the other day, so hopefully you remember what it means. Then finally, we say a last paragraph, but it might only be one line. It's just a short conclusion, and it could generally be something that sums up the article in a few words. It might even just be a quote to save as an aide-mémoire for the reader to make it memorable. Maybe you want to put a link in there to further information on some topic that you've spoken about. Or it could be a restatement of your stand first or lead sentence. But of course, you have to paraphrase that. You can't write exactly the same thing again. We did discuss paraphrasing last week again. Paraphrasing, you're going to say the same thing, but in a different way, either using synonyms or putting the information at the front to the back, that sort of thing, to make it look different but still memorable. Okay, so people are going to be reading on newspaper or on their tablets or on their phones. So that's why your article has to be clear, concise, short paragraphs. Okay, otherwise you have to bring out your Kindle to read the book or the dissertation, whatever you have written. Okay, right. Right, here's some writing mistakes to be avoided. Do more research. Always make sure you have more than enough relevant background information, quotes from your sources, and stats to write a decent article. Because what if you took it to your editor and he said, take out that part, I don't like it, get something else in there. You rush to your file because you're on a time limit, and you find some other information that could go in place of the one he has rejected. Okay, so make sure you do as much research as possible. Use as many quotes as you can. Why? Because quotes enliven your news story, as the interviewees themselves can be quirky and interesting, and they might say some very weird things that could be pertinent. You don't know until you look at them and see what you want to put in there. Could be somebody who has a totally different viewpoint on the whole scenario. So good to make it balanced writing. You could have that. One quote that's maybe pro the whole thing, someone who's against the whole thing. Again, make sure you've got the full names of your sources. This is for legal reasons. Maybe even some biographical information if it's pertinent, like the man who lived on that same street for the last 30 years said whatever. Otherwise, you could be slammed with a libel case, or as we said, the newspaper could be sued, you could be sued. Another thing is, do not make sweeping statements. All people over the age of 20 have got some brain damage. That's not true, obviously. You always make sure you have facts, evidence, and statistics to back up what you say, your contentions, because your readers won't trust you otherwise, because they know you're talking rubbish. And of course, your editor would never trust you and you would get fired. You can't create false news or false evidence. You'll have seen a lot of that recently on the internet. Now, here's an important thing. Articles are generally always written in the third person because they need to be objective, impartial, and fair, with no personal opinions. Okay, that is a general thing for a news article. But when, for example, you have to write a travel account that specifically tells you, write about your experience in, let's say, the Badlands National Park, obviously you'll have to go with I. So that makes a travel account different when you're writing it from a personal perspective. Again, how long should a paragraph be? 2 to 3 sentences. That's all. That's why a subheading can sometimes summarize what's in there, or sometimes it can clarify what you're writing about. So subheadings are generally very good with news articles or travel accounts. So be very careful with that, especially for people on their cell phone. It's nicer for them to read a couple of lines rather than pages and pages and pages. Right, let's take a brief look at a travel account. I'm just going to be referring you to your book generally. Some people may have written assignment 5 and done very well, and some people may not have. If you saw the number of beautiful travel accounts I had from people going to London, as I say, Italy, Croatia, wherever they had been on holiday, was so beautifully written, lovely photos, the whole thing, but they had to get 0 unless they rewrote that essay correctly to make it about the task, about the Badlands National Park. So there's so much information available when you write a travel account. How do you know what to choose? What's the priorities? Well, maybe it's to do with the slant of the article. Who have you to write the article for? Why are you writing it? What's the purpose of the article? Do you have to bring people to that place? Are you making it sound good? If so, you must be careful. If you look in your student book, 9, page 12, chapter 1, topic 2, it tells you how to look for facts. And even when you've got some facts, sometimes you have to infer some information from those facts. Okay, they might imply something that you either want to discuss or don't want to discuss. So take a look at that chapter first, the topic 2, which is selecting and noting key information. Now, what tone or register should a travel account be written in? What on earth does that mean? Remember, tone is the mood. Is it to be a serious article, a humorous article? Is it to be intense? Is it to be interesting? Or anything else? It depends what the task has asked you. And what on earth is the register? The register means the formal or informal style. Again, that depends on the audience, who you are writing for. Okay? If it's for business people, it has to be a bit more formal. If it's for teenagers, it's going to be informal because they'll find that much more interesting. To look at that, look at topic 3 on page 16. Okay, that will help you there. How can I make the article interesting if I'm just writing about facts? Okay, topic 6 on your book on page 26, I think it is. Let me just check. Yes, 26. Topic 6 is about varying your sentences, because you can't just keep writing the same old, same old. You must make a variety of sentences by using simple, complex, and compound sentences. Remember, compound sentences are the longest because they could be a few sentences joined together, maybe 2, with and, but, or, that sort of thing. Complex, you're going to go into your descriptions and give us more information about something you're writing about. Okay? So if you look at topic 6, varying sentences for effect, and number 7, boost your vocabulary. Because that's another way. Are there any other ways to make the article interesting? Again, student book, page 28, topic 7. Vocabulary, synonyms, descriptive verbs, adverbs, and adverbs which suit the mood and atmosphere of the Badlands National Park in this case. It also looks at the layout, where you might use some images with captions to create an impact. Maybe you're saying it's really desert and there's hardly anything to eat for the animals there. So you've got a photo of one little bush or something like that the animals might eat, what animals live there, etc. So you're going to make your article interesting, and perhaps the images would also help make it interesting, and the vocabulary you use, the variety of sentences you use will make it very interesting. Again, just to remind you, which travel account are you going to write about? Topic 8, page 28, Badlands National Park. It does exist in the world. You can look it up and you can do your own research first, because this is going to make it much more interesting than what they've got in the book. That is someone else's perception of the Badlands National Park. Maybe you find out something else. Maybe you mix it up with what you've read there, because once you do your own research, it makes it interesting for you as well. Then you work your way through the chapter. It's got quite a few questions. Page 28, yeah. It's got 4 or 5 sections. So if you work through them, that helps you to see what you should be writing. And then finally, you decide how you can make the best impression on the reader. Okay? I mean, what if you're asked to write a travel account in an exam? You have to know how to do this. And we've looked at the news articles, and we've looked at travel account as well. It's going to be very similar, perhaps. The only difference is the travel account in this particular instance has asked about you visiting Badlands National Park and your impressions. So it's going to be you, I did this, I did that, or I and my friends, my family and I, my friends, whoever you went with, maybe you went alone. So it's going to make it very interesting by doing your research, then working through the chapters, deciding how to make a good impression. Okay, so you must think about these things. How much information? Choose, I don't know how many facts, it depends how long you're making your essay. And then you're going to try and either make the facts interesting. How? The tone of your writing. Is it serious, humorous, etc.? The register, is it formal or informal? Formal writing, no contractions. And just for the people who put an apostrophe S for plural nouns, no, 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 never. Okay, plurals are just with a straight S on the end, no apostrophes. Okay, you can't believe people at your stage are still doing that. They haven't learned after all those years. Make your article interesting. Use the variety of sentences, simple, complex, and compound. Not writing the longest sentence in the whole world, joined by and, right to the bottom of the page, which some people even write in their exam because the word paragraph somehow magically gets out of their heads. Synonyms, very important. If you can call something dry and dusty, what other synonyms can you use? Make it much more interesting. Okay. Right then, let's stop that now. Right, hopefully everyone's had a better look at how to write news articles and how to write a travel account.